Welcome to meeting number 40, if you can believe it, of the Community of Practice for Schools and Districts Moving Learning Outdoors. This is part of the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative, a collaboration between Green Schoolyards America, the Lawrence Hall of Science, San Mateo County Office of Education, and 10 Strands. Our meeting today is being hosted by my colleague, Nancy Striniste, who is Director of East Coast Programs, and myself, Lauren McKenna. So here to speak more to how their organization has promoted outdoor learning during the pandemic and ways in which the field has grown and changed over the last several years is Liza Lowe of the Inside Outside Network. So welcome, Liza, and I'll pass it over to Nancy, who will introduce her further.
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored and excited to introduce my Antioch colleague, Liza Lowe. Liza is affiliate faculty at Antioch University, New England. She teaches the Working with Families and Communities course in the Nature-Based Early Childhood Certificate. For over 10 years, Liza taught children of all ages through outdoor environmental education in Maryland, Michigan, and Vermont before founding Wild Roots Nature School, a licensed nature-based preschool kindergarten in New Hampshire in 2013. Now she's the director of Inside Outside, a professional network for nature and place-based educators. She spends much of her time connecting and supporting teachers in the important work of engaging children with nature and outdoor learning. We are so grateful to Inside Outside for all their resource sharing early in the pandemic and always. And you may have noticed that they are referenced frequently in the National Outdoor Learning Library. We'll be putting links in the chat as Liza tells us about her work, and welcome, Liza.
Thank you, Nancy. So thank you all. I'm really glad to be joining you today. And I'm joining from New Hampshire. It's the unceded land of the Abenaki people. This is where I live and work, where that little orange arrow is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. It's the Connecticut River Basin, and not very far to the other side of me is Vermont, just over the bridge. It's more specifically the band of the Sakoki people, and Abenaki or Abenaki translates to people of the Dawnland. So as Nancy already mentioned, I'm the director of Inside Outside, which is a professional network that's it's here to support educators and offer lots of resources to actually anyone who's interested in teaching and learning outside, nature-based education, place-based education. So Inside Outside is a sort of branch of Antioch University, New England, and Antioch has a nature-based early childhood certificate program. And I think Lauren will put some links in the chat so to direct you all there. And they also have, Antioch also has a place-based certificate program. Us in the early childhood program, in the nature-based early childhood program, we are really fortunate to have funding from the George B. Storer Foundation, which has helped support getting Inside Outside off the ground, and it also supports other offerings that we do through the professional network. So I'm gonna show you just a few slides, and then I'm actually gonna take you right to our website because I think it'll be easier to just kind of, I bet we could go through it a little bit together. And I want to share a little of the history of the network. So Antioch began to pilot what would become a nature-based early childhood certificate program, I think in 2012, 2013. And around that same time, they started offering In Bloom conferences, which are a series of conferences that happen in the spring. And all of this work is, it's a way to get teachers, educators, people who are interested in working with children outdoors and doing the work hands-on. So guided by, you know, the workshop facilitator or the instructor of the course. A lot of what we do, and also as Nancy mentioned, in our work together, it's getting teachers, getting people outdoors doing this kind of together, instead of this, like talking at each other. So between the certificate program and between the conferences, the feedback that instructors were hearing was that people really wanted to stay connected beyond their coursework and beyond the conferences. And eventually the In Bloom conferences morphed to include an Inside Outside conference that happens in the fall and is geared more toward elementary school teachers and middle school teachers. So between these different certificate programs and the conferences and this, sort of ongoing feedback of, hey, we loved this conference. Hey, we feel so grateful to have gone through this certificate program. And like now we want to stay connected to these people. We've found our people, we found like-minded colleagues out there, and we want to stay connected. And then the other piece of that too was Antioch put out 2 different films, one called The Best Day Ever and one called Turning School Inside Out. So all these things are happening. We're hearing this feedback, and at some point it was decided that starting a professional network would be really useful to people, helping them stay connected beyond their coursework in these conferences. And so we started in a very sort of grassroots way and very locally what would become Inside Outside. So when we initially launched the network, it had a different name. It was pretty focused in the New England Northeast region of the United States. We were meeting in person, and those meetings in person ended up morphing into what would become local chapters, because people said, well, we can't drive all the way to Keene, New Hampshire. Can we just start something over here? And then we also started hosting quarterly meetings where it would be this hybrid thing. The chapters would meet and we'd Zoom in. And then, of course, COVID happened. And so then we shifted gears and changed things again. And really the network sort of exploded with COVID and Zoom and everything happening online. And so because of COVID, we've developed, not because of COVID, because of the sort of how things have stretched and expanded for our network. Also, our website and our resources have expanded. And so I'll take you through all of that in a moment. I just wanted to also, let me see. Oh, okay. So I wanted to let you know that the purpose of Inside Outside is to support, connect, and partner. Initially it was nature-based educators and it was early childhood educators. Even that has morphed because people come to us and say, well, I don't identify as an early childhood educator, or I don't identify as a nature-based educator, but here's what I want or need. So we've just continued to meet the needs of the people who are accessing our resources. Our purpose is to develop a network of educators and educational institutions throughout the United States to support, connect, and partner, to confidently, safely, and joyfully venture outdoors with children and to use nature for teaching and learning. I suspect a lot of us collectively have had the experience either personally or working with someone else where people don't feel safe going outdoors, or they're just not sure where to even start or what to do. So that's some of what we are here for, is to offer some of that guidance and expertise. Inside Outside advocates for every child's access to outdoor play and learning, connecting educators within and across communities to share nature and place-based practices, addressing practical and logistical barriers, build confidence and skills, and work toward regional change. So then when COVID happened, a group of us who were already affiliated with Antioch and some who were already affiliated with the network decided that we really wanted to get involved. We knew that being outdoors was really the safer place to be. And we wanted to help promote that and help teachers and administrators and government officials understand that and start to see that. So we put out these different position statements. So if you click on under about and then go to position statements, and what started as this sort of fall position statement just about going outside, like here are different resources, here's a way to start, here's even a sample schedule. That quickly grew into, okay, now it's spring. How are we going to encourage people to keep doing this? They've started. How are we going to encourage them to keep doing it? So we put out a second position statement. And then, oh, sorry, there was winter. That happened. also in between those two seasons. And so this was the thing too, right? I mean, as many of us right now are finding, okay, how are we going to stay outside? How do we stay warm? How do we keep kids moving? How do we actually make curriculum connections outdoors? So we also did a winter position statement. And now we're in the throes of thinking, okay, do we need a fourth one, right? Because what happened for many schools, at teachers and administrators at the beginning of the school years, they said, okay, well, we did that. That was last year. That was COVID. And now, like, we're kind of moving out of that. So we're feeling some energy around wanting to encourage people to continue doing this great work. So in addition to the group of us through Antioch and Inside Outside putting out position statements, there was another group, specifically early childhood educators, who started putting out position statements, again, around the benefits of outdoor learning, not necessarily connected to COVID, just trying to show early childhood educators why they should take children outside, why it's so great to keep going out. So there are 3 or 4 different position statements specifically for early childhood educators. Some of the other things beyond these position statements, some of the other things that we did early on and have continued to do is writing letters to administrators, superintendents advocating for this work, taking students outside, working with children outdoors, seeing ways in which you can move your curriculum out and how you can even do so much more than just taking your lesson outside. Writing letters to the American Academy of Pediatrics to encourage them to be giving this message also. Letters to various government officials, and just really creating more and more resources. Because we have this amazing resource of Zoom, we've been able to offer webinars. And then the other thing that we were able to do is through our chapters, our local chapters. So under upcoming, there's this chapter meetings. Our local chapters, these groups that were meeting really locally, started, they had to meet on Zoom if they were going to meet at all. And so what that did is it kind of opened up the door for anyone, anywhere to join these meetings and kind of see like, oh, that's a topic that's of interest to me. I'd like to jump on. All of these resources are free to people. And the different folks who lead the various groups, the different chapters, come at it with different perspectives, right? They're in different areas of the Northeast, but also at this point, I mean, we have a group out in Colorado, we have a group in Pennsylvania. So each of those chapter leaders brings their own sort of flair to their meeting. And they also are pretty clued into what the folks in their local region are wanting and needing around support. So for example, the Southern Vermont group, they met last month, they had one topic and folks said, okay, next month, we really want to learn about working with fire. So many of the chapter leaders bring with them some area of expertise around teaching and learning outdoors. And all of these are just, you register here, it's either an RSVP for an in-person meeting or a Zoom link. And then also gives you the chapter leader's email address if you want to connect with them directly. One of the other things that we did is people were just saying, okay, how do we even get started? We hear what you're saying, we get this, but how do we get started? So we created all these resources about getting started. And some of these links are videos of like how to set up an outdoor classroom. Outdoor toileting is always a big question and concern. So just each of these links takes you to another page with lots of other resources and links. And so just a lot of time put into trying to develop really easy access for educators, how to get started, even around clothing. And then winter came. And we offered a couple different webinars, which again have ample resources, and then built a page specifically about going outdoors in winter. Can you nap outdoors? What are what kind of books? What are the materials and equipment? What about curriculum connections? So lots of people, lots of different educators contributed to make all of this happen. And yeah, just lots of different resources. Then of course, spring rolled around. So then we had some spring webinars, and let's see, those can be found. So under this link, the Inside Outside trainings, we've developed what do you call it? a YouTube page, sorry. We developed a YouTube page, and we're trying to get all of our webinar recordings on that YouTube page. So the winter webinars are listed here, and then the spring webinar, and they're all the different related resources too, again, thinking about curriculum connections. And so I just encourage you and invite you to spend some time clicking around, because you're likely to find things that will be relevant to you. Let's see, what else did I want to say? Outdoors in spring. Oh, the other thing is just on we have a calendar, right, that just kind of shows you everything that's coming up. And on the home page, at the very bottom of the home page, you can find that calendar again. And then also on the homepage, it lists all the different chapters, some of which are really active and others are just at different points, kind of based on people's, bandwidth and just capacity. This school year started off in a really different sort of tone and flavor than last school year. So again, we're just sort of here trying to meet the needs of teachers and administrators. So a few other things I want to share while I have a couple minutes. As we're moving forward and we're sort of seeing more what's happening in classrooms, getting more feedback, we are working to expand the network in the Northeast region and other areas, wanting to provide K-8 teachers and administrators with more support for successfully teaching outdoors. And more specifically, even in the elementary and middle school grades. When we first started, we were really focused on early childhood, as I mentioned. So just wanting to offer support for those upper grades, because they're saying, hey, we're here too, and we need help, and we need help, like advocating for this. We'll also be working to engage culturally diverse and underserved populations that we have not yet reached. And doing that by a more sort of a direct outreach. Up until this point, it's been more like, okay, here are all these resources, here's what we can provide, and it's all free, and we've just been putting it out there. Moving forward, we want to do more of a direct outreach. And also additionally intensifying our outreach to make local groups, resources, and professional development offerings more accessible, inclusive, and relevant. And also it would be not great if I didn't tell you this, but in the upper right-hand corner of the page, there's this button to join us. And again, like I said, it's free. Once you join, you get a monthly newsletter, which I work pretty hard to try to include lots of different professional development offerings that seem like they'd be relevant to the educators who come to us, who find our network. And on this page, you can choose the local chapter that's relevant for you. And yeah, just share what, there's a place to share comments. So anything that you would want me to know about you, or if you want to make a direct connection with someone else or a different school or program. And I think those are kind of the main points that I wanted to share with you all. And I'd be really curious to hear any questions that you have, and see if there are things I missed. Let me just go back through here.
Thank you so much, Liza. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop in the chat or raise your hand.
Liza, I was really amazed. I feel like I've been keeping on top of things with the inside outside, but I had no idea there were so many chapters. That's really amazing. That's very cool.
Yeah, and some of them are placeholders too. Like DC does not have an active chapter. It's a placeholder because enough people have reached out to me to say, hey, where is there a chapter in DC? So it's like setting the groundwork for someone to reach out to say, okay, I'd like to start the chapter, right? There's only so many pieces that I can hold. So these amazing folks who come forward and say, okay, I'm willing to be a chapter leader, then they're kind of holding that piece. So it's really requiring a lot of different people coming together to make this network happen, which is really cool. And the other thing, I do want to do a screen share one more time because So there's a place here for assessment tools. This is a question often that people have is, you know, like once I get outside, how do I document learning? There's also the risk benefit assessment forms, and we've done a couple different webinars that go through that. But this in a site ecological impact assessment. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And then we've been trying to build out this social justice page as well, that just introduces people to different resources, again, thinking about sort of diversity and inclusion around teaching outdoors and outdoor learning. So anyway, all of that. Oh, and the children's books, actually, there are a lot of really great links on here just to, you know, I feel like you can go to a website like this and spend all day clicking around. So, okay.
Amazing. I hope lots of people will join.
Yeah, and actually, Katie, I didn't see that Katie's here, but Katie West leads the new Portland Public School chapter. So that's exciting.
That's great. All right.
Welcome, Katie. I have a question. So I see you have a lot of really wonderful chapters. Are there particular areas that you would like to start a chapter in, or if someone has, you know, if they're from another area and they want to come to you and say, hey, I want to start a chapter in this area?
Yeah, it's a great question. So two things. One is that I don't think there's not really like a desire or need on our end to start chapters. It's sort of where there is a need. I think learning about that is part of our work going forward. Where is the need? The other thing is we have I didn't mention this either, so I'm going to put this right into the chat box. There's a spot on the website at the top, it says partners. There are a lot of other professional networks out there. A lot of them are focused on early childhood education, but not all of them. And we've started to partner with them. So if you click on that partners tab, you can see there might already be a network in your area. And so first, that's what I'm trying to do, is connect people with those networks that already exist. There's no need to, like, you know, reinvent the wheel here, duplicate efforts. So that's really what, you know, we're like working to support and connect in all the ways. If someone does reach out to me, like, for example, Katie reached out and she said, you know, Portland area. And I was like, well, we already have all these chapters in Maine. Are you sure? But then she said, no, like, it's a very different, yes, this needs to happen. And I was like, okay, I don't live in Maine. I trust you. You know, so that's the kind of thing, is people just reach out to me and yeah, sort of like pitch their need. And I'm like, okay, let's see how we can make it happen.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I see a chat. Nap time in our room is over. I plan to check out the website.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Nancy and Lauren.
Thank you, Liza. I think it's so important for people to know about all the great work that you guys are doing. And I think our work and your work complement each other. And so it's really important to get it out there. People need the things that you guys are offering. That's great. I want to give a shout out to Empower Ed, which is the advocacy organization in DC. And their tweet was what Lauren shared earlier. And I just felt like they summed it up so beautifully, the weird situation that we all find ourselves in this week with a new variant, and how outdoor learning can still be the answer, is still the answer. So if you don't follow them on Twitter, I encourage you to, and retweet and share that idea that we can keep schools open outdoors no matter what. Great. Anything
I have
else?
a question.
Okay.
And I'm in Southern California, where it has been hot and windy and definitely not snowy. So climate change in a different way. We've got our fire season has been extended beyond. But I'm just curious if anyone has any advice or thoughts about, and as we enter winter, maybe what some of the scarier barriers are. Say if you're a school that hasn't thought about outdoor learning at all and is arriving to this idea totally fresh, how might that first elevator pitch look for them? Or what might be the first thing that you tell them about looking into outdoor learning in spite of weather and all other barriers?
Well, I can take a stab at that to start. I think if it's someone in a cold climate, I always say, look at Portland, Maine. They were outside all year last year, and if they can do it in Maine, we can do it here in Virginia, where I am, and they're worried about it being too cold. It's just possible to do. And maybe the next thing is just to really focus on clothing and equitable access to the right clothing for everyone to be warm and dry outside. And I think that makes a huge difference. But I would love to hear from people in those really cold climates who are doing it.
Well, Nancy, this is Dan Schnitzer in Durham.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, and hello, everybody. That's a great question because I'm dealing with that now. I moved here from Chicago to the South, so I'm not in a very cold climate, but you wouldn't be able to tell by talking to anybody here. And I think that it's important to frame the conversation around, at this point, still the health benefits of, we know that flu and now COVID will increase in the winter because more people are spending more time indoors. Therefore, it's a great break, and it's really important that kids get outdoors. So let's focus the conversation around how do we do it, not if we do it or should we do it. And I think invariably, to Nancy's point, it will lead to a clothing solution, which is a very doable solution. And it might require doing coat drives or blankets, or finding the pieces to make sure that everyone has access to the clothes that they need. That's certainly an issue we deal with here, but it's a very solvable problem. So my big advice would simply be to try to predict what the challenges are going to be and focus on the problems with solutions, not the problems with perception. So it is very clear. When someone told me, an assistant principal told me the other day, when it's 60 in the shade, it's too cold to go outside. And so that's a perception issue. That's hard to argue. He's from Tennessee. It's hard to argue with that. So we said, well, what do we need to keep kids cold? However one defines cold. What do we need to do that? And it became a clothing issue. They talked about heaters, but that's not a safe solution for us. So, what if we limit the time? What if we make it a 10-minute time outside and just kind of build on where you need to be? And eventually people will see it's not so cold, it's not so scary.
I'd be happy to, Nancy, do you want to go? I'd be happy to put a couple words in when you're done.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Katie.
I think one thing, Lauren's the one who posed it, was just, I am always encouraging people to start as soon as possible, because as Dan just mentioned too, it's that acclimatization process, like really acclimating to being outside. And so if you start in January, it's really hard to motivate. So I taught outside all but 6 days last year. I just had it in my mindset. So that's like the consistency. And then the students build on that consistency, as all of us who teach outside know, like it's really consistency, the consistency of communicating to the parents. But if you start when it's already cold, it is a much harder sell. So because we're getting so close to winter, at least where I am in Maine, it's like, I'd go out today. I'm telling teachers, like, start today. And then with that, I also am very careful about language. So a child, and no offense to the 60-degree principle, is that I don't let the administrators say that a child is freezing at 50 degrees. You are not freezing. You are not, if you're in the sunlight, at risk of hypothermia. So as a student forgot a coat, and I had an administrator write home and say, your child was freezing today. And I said, please don't. So there's a lot of education around how much the body can hold. So I think that's some of the work that would be great to continue to see. And if it's out there, might be out there, Liza, in the position climate. And then the third is just Portland has prioritized and used the SRF grant. I mean, I just got approved on this. So we're going to have gear libraries at all elementary schools and hopefully all high schools by next year, middle and high schools. So it's a district prioritization.
That's really cool. And that's what I was thinking of. What I was going to say too, is that it has to do with mindset and making it fun and not scary, and starting small and easing yourself in. Outdoor staff meetings are something that we recommend as a way to get, help people dip a toe in and see that it's okay. Teresa, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. Is there a conversation with people who are doing an elementary school curriculum about not sitting down? Because that's the thing that I can't quite imagine, is sitting for 40 minutes, and then I don't know, that's asking teachers to like really rethink, to have like an active physical lesson. So anyway, is that conversation part of your work, Katie?
Yes, on a couple different levels. One, sorry, you can tell my cat is loving the virtual meeting. So one is that's like the classroom management, and anyone else can speak to this too, of just how you conduct your time outside. How do you sit? So we're taking down our tents. We had a big thing about whether to leave out event tents. And I said, I don't think it's an industry standard. We're going to be taking them down. And then sending out the follow-up email that said to all administrators, kids can actually stand up while they're eating. They can actually rock from side to side and stay warm. They will not choke, maybe if they start running. So really gathering in that comfort level of how can we do things a little differently. And then there's the secondary level, which is how do you weave it into the curriculum? How do you really, so I have some garden teachers, and as I'm watching them, they're still taking their indoor ways of teaching outdoors. And I'm in this process of really showing them how to involve the body inside the instruction. And that's another level. I don't think we're quite there yet, but working on it.
It's such an important thing to pursue, though. I just think school would be so much easier for such a broader spectrum of children if it was physical.
And two things I was thinking of, the issue around sort of jackets and having gear, and what Katie was speaking to, starting at the beginning of the school year when temperatures are, and the weather is just a little bit friendlier for most people. Even if you wait after the holidays, a lot of children will be getting jackets and other gear, from their families. And it's also the season of coat drives and things like that, I think that Dan mentioned. So if teachers aren't going out yet, maybe they actually hold off until January or February and ease people in when they have the gear. And I think another thing is setting the precedence of starting, if it's possible, actually start your day outside, because caregivers, parents, guardians, if they are dropping off a child to the outdoors, then there's some kind of, it's a different sort of mindset of what you need to do to prepare your child or children for the day.
I also think just speaking a little passionately about it, like for any of us that have taught outside, we can communicate that of like, have you ever seen a group of kids outside when it's snowing and they feel like they're the only people who have ever been outside, and how much it bonds the group, like letting that marketing be there of the passion of how incredible it actually is, I think starts to, in my experience, it reminds people of their childhood. It makes decision makers like, oh, I remember, and then they aren't as hard and fast in what they were thinking.
And a little bit back to what Lauren was saying, another piece of that, how to encourage people to just get started, is that just take your students out, once, just see what happens and kind of live into that moment. And for a lot of teachers, having that experience and kind of witnessing, sometimes their students outdoors is enough.
That's great to hear. I often feel like there's a disconnect in the outdoor education conversation, because at least with preschool, like the bar is so low, like the pay is so terrible. In our state, it's such a mess Like to be like, can be a joyful adventure. Like this can be like a really great day is just like completely far from the entire conversation. So that's great that teachers are like, oh, my students love this. And that's motivating.
Thank you everyone for sharing. That's all really, really great advice. And I encourage you to continue to, connect with each other and share resources. And thank you so much, Liza and Nancy, for sharing about your own background and wonderful resources moving forward.